So I started to ask young kids what engineers do. I have a friend who's also a professor in mechanical engineering, and Emily Hunt and I, and together we were starting to try to understand how to communicate engineering to young kids. So together we probably asked about 100 kids what engineers do, and the number one answer was, I don't know. And the number two answer was, they drive a train. Okay. Well, the truth is that there's a lot of people who don't understand what engineers do, and that's okay, but we sort of embarked on figuring out a way to communicate engineering, and not just communicating it, but making it appealing to young girls. And so it's about time that we start talking about engineering, especially in very young children's classrooms. So before you can do that, and I think everybody here has actually acted as an engineer before. And so I think you may not know that, but we're going to talk today about what engineers do, and I think after you hear this, you'll realize that engineering is actually very natural. So we ask kids, well, tell me something about technology, because that's really where it starts. You just can't start talking about engineering until you start talking about technology. So I'll take a bunch of kids and I'll ask them, give me some examples of technologies. And they resoundingly say pretty much anything electronic, but they'll say cell phones, my iPad, my game controller, my laptop, my TV, pretty much anything that plugs into a wall. And so I'll say, okay, so now that we've got a bunch of examples, let's come up with a definition. How would you explain to your friend what technology is without using examples? And it's just that. They come back with something that plugs into a wall but is fun, something that uses electricity, and okay, that's when I say, I actually have in my bag one of my favorite technologies, and I can't wait to share it with you. And young children love anticipation, so they're wondering what's inside this bag. And so I'll slowly pull out my favorite technology, and we'll start talking all about it. And then I show it to them. It's my sunglasses. I actually can't drive without my sunglasses because I can't see very well. I say, what problem does my sunglass solve for me? It helps me see. They understand that right away. It helps me see when it's too bright outside. Okay, so then the lenses are purposefully made to block out the sun, because if they were clear, they wouldn't work as sunglasses. That's right, there's a purpose behind the lens. And the frame is plastic, so it's lightweight, so I can wear it and it's comfortable. That's right. There was a purpose behind that material. And look how the frames close. So I can put it in my purse or my pocket, and they don't break. That was a really good design idea. Yeah, so now I introduced a technology that wasn't electronic, and they can certainly see how it solved a problem for me. So then I pass out a bunch of bags with a bunch of different technologies in it, and they're starting to catch on that technologies don't need to be things that plug into the wall. So I'll just give you one more example just to kind of have fun with it. So one of my other favorite technologies is the plastic spoon. And so I'll ask them, what problem does this solve for you? And they'll say, this helps me eat. Okay, so why do you think it's plastic instead of maybe stainless steel? Oh, well, you couldn't throw stainless steel away. Okay, so there's a purpose behind the material that was used in the design of the spoon. There sure is. Okay, so now kids are starting to see that technologies are things that solve a problem, that fulfill a need, that were designed by engineers. And their perspective on technology grows considerably. So from what we saw before, they know now that a broom was designed by humans to solve a problem, and a bonnet, and a basket, and a piano. And they recognize that things like a dandelion and an oak tree or a volcano are not designed by humans, and those are not technology. This is really important because now kids understand that technology is all around them. It's everywhere. And that's important because now they're seeing that if engineers design technologies and technology is all around us, then engineers have helped us in every way of life. It's meaningful. But a lot of times they're still a little bit confused about science versus engineering. And that's okay. So we talk about science. We talk about how scientists are mainly driven about observing the world around us, understanding the world around us, asking questions and probing to understand better the world around us. One of my favorite scientists in history is Michael Faraday. And he hoped that his students would always ask two questions. He hoped that they would always ask, what is the cause and why does it happen? Scientists at their very core are asking questions, trying to understand the world around us. Well, engineers are a little bit more driven by problem solving. So we have a river and there's two cities on both sides of the river, and the problem is they need to cross the river. So the engineer would design a technology to do that. Or maybe the river is polluted and it's killing the plant and animal life that live around it. So the engineer would have to design a technology to clean the water. So if engineers are more driven by problem solving, then they're more focused on changing our world around us. So engineers design technology. Well, that's great. Now we're understanding a link between technology and its wide breadth and engineering. But to really enforce that, to reinforce that, I like to use this children's book, and trust me, there really aren't very many engineering children's books at all. But this one, Engineering Elephants, I think is very good because it was designed specifically for kindergarten, first grade children, 5, 6, 7 years old, whose attention span is very short. And so there are strategies in this book that help to engage young children. For example, the book iteratively asks questions. This keeps their attention. And these aren't just questions to engage them, they're questions that they can easily answer in order to empower them. So, for example, engineers make elephants with long swinging trunks. Wait a minute. Do engineers really make elephants? They resoundingly reply, no. No, they don't make elephants, but I have their attention. But they do make roller coasters. So then we can talk about a fun technology that everyone is excited about. So roller coasters. And this is strategic because now we're introducing basic math and science vocabulary. And for young children that can't read, a strategy to keep their attention is to use rhyming patterns so that they can anticipate what is next. So up and down, around again, roller coasters are so much fun. Engineers design the loops, sometimes 2 or just 1. So we've integrated math in the flow of the words. Momentum holds you in your seat. Now that's a science vocabulary word, and they're becoming familiar with this before they can even read. So momentum holds you in your seat and keeps the car on the right path. Engineers make it all work using science and math. So the story keeps their attention by asking questions, and it familiarizes them with STEM vocabulary, science, technology, engineering, math vocabulary, through rhyming patterns. And it goes on and talks about all sorts of things that engineers can't make, like eggshells and ladybugs and volcanoes and rainbows, and then things that they can make, like fun things like roller coasters and race cars and surfboards. But this is important because the story ends with our elephant at the drafting table, and we're talking about all the fun technologies that engineers can design. Now, when you grow up to be an engineer, what new technologies will you create? This is an important part because this allows the child to don an engineering identity, to actually act as an engineer. And so for this part, I like to not just have conversations about all the different things that they might create in the future world, but I actually like to give them paper, like engineering paper, and let them do a little bit of an art project. And this is really important for young girls because in kindergarten, first and second, young girls gravitate more towards the arts. And so having an art project and exploring their creativity at this point really enhances their interest, especially young girls in engineering. So we use engineering paper. I give them lots of different colors, and I say, draw for me what you would create if you were an engineer. And I also remind them that this is actually one step in the engineering design process that the students in college do. So they are acting like engineers right now, and they are just 5 years old. So I'm going to show you some pictures. This one didn't come out so good. But this is an environmental trash picker-upper robot. And so this young girl thought that the side of the road was just too dirty, and she came up with an idea on how to create this robot that would constantly keep the environment cleaner. And this young girl was also very interested in roller skating, amazingly. And I like her little hook on her skateboard, and she put all the protective gear on the little person here with the helmet and the knee straps and everything to keep that person safe with 2 loops. And so this activity helps them understand that engineers have some creativity to them too. Okay, so I'm getting close to the end, but I do think it's really important to talk about generally our engineering is elementary core values and understandings. And so this will hopefully put engineering in a light that is specific to targeting young girls. So engineering activities that are open-ended and have multiple solutions. This is actually very important for 2 reasons. Number one, young girls are turned off by competitions. So you have to remember that any kind of a design challenge in engineering is not a competition, it's simply a challenge, because there are multiple ways to solve a problem. And that's different than math and science, where there's usually just one answer. And so the idea of opening up the right answer in multiple different paths is sometimes foreign to people. So remember that engineering is open-ended with multiple solutions, and that they're situated in a larger context. This is also very important for young girls, because there needs to be a personal connection to the design challenge in order to make the whole engineering activity meaningful. So, for example, the robotic competition isn't necessarily showing people the meaningfulness behind an engineering design, because there may not be a connection to a certain problem, like saving the turtles from the polluted river, for example. So stories or narratives that connect the design challenge to some meaningful situation are also very important for attracting young girls. And they're scaffolded in a way that allows children to work and think independently. And this is where I believe diversity in engineering is so important, because in the future we have a whole lot of design challenges that are real, from biology to energy and beyond. And I believe it'll be people with different perspectives and from different backgrounds that will contribute their own unique creativity to the overall success of an engineering design. And so thinking independently and creatively is very important. But make no mistake, engineering is also a collaborative effort. It's a team effort, and they will work together at some point. And all engineering design challenges are hands-on activities. Even the science-based inquiry, you have to get up and you have to explore materials and their properties. And so to conclude, engineers apply science and math to design or improve technologies. They use the engineering design process, and for young children, that's ask, imagine, plan, create, improve. 1 for each finger on your hand. Ask being that science component. And they value and learn from failure. In fact, sometimes they'll design things just to see when they fail in order to improve the design. But that's also something that's not always acceptable in our culture. For engineers, failure is part of the design process. We learn from it and we make things better. And they consider properties of materials. The science behind choosing materials for a particular purpose is very important. And they consider criteria and constraints. Certainly young children have only a few pieces of construction paper, whereas adults might have a budget. But either way, criteria and constraints are a part of the engineering core understandings. So I'm going to end by saying that engineering uses science and math. We've talked about that. And because engineers create technology, I like to think of engineering as the glue that holds STEM together. I'm Michele Pantoya. Thank you very much.